I've always honestly wanted to take on challenges like this. I always tried to subvert expectations. Hi, I'm Josh Hartnett, and this is how I became Cooper in Trap. I think that Cooper is Cooper throughout. The Butcher is always inside of Cooper in every moment. That is who he is and how he sees himself. But how he would like to project himself to the world is entirely different, because clearly he can't go around telling everybody that he's a serial killer. So he's created this really great front for himself. And in that front, and in the execution of that front, he's become very, very close to his daughter, and maybe even started to love her in a certain way, like not in the traditional sense, not the way that you or I would love someone because he's a psychopath, but he has found a reciprocated vision of himself from her that he likes. And so he wants to protect that, and he wants to protect her. And he knows that the world's a dangerous place, and so he gives a lot of lessons to her. And there's this sort of fatherly mentality. He is her father, but not in the same way that I think you or I would be. So, yeah, I think it's always Cooper, and he's always the Butcher, but on top of that, there are a lot of layers of artifice. I've read a lot of books about people with psychopathy who were, busted for killing people. And one of the kind of main traits that a lot of writers found with them is that they're very charming. Necessarily charming because they want to put you at your ease before they do something terrible to you, or they want to hide, and they want to hide in plain sight, so they pretend like they're this, very easygoing, nice, loving whatever, and in this case, father and husband and fireman. And I found that aspect of it really interesting, and we explored that quite a bit over the course of the beginning of the film, and then sort of the mask drops after a while. I can't really break it down like the different physicality of the characters simply because it's an emotional shift, and it's also an internal shift, and in the course of that, he has more fun when he's allowed to sort of just be himself, as we all do. Like when you're with great friends and everybody knows you and you guys can just talk. You can all just kind of say whatever and nobody's judging you. Well, Cooper feels like he's been hiding a lot of who he is for his entire life from everyone, and he's pretty good at it. But when he's able to sort of let loose and let Lady Raven in, or let someone in within the film to show him who he really is, it sort of loosens him up. It gives him the freedom to just be, and I think that's kind of counterintuitive, not something that you would ultimately think would happen when you're getting to know a serial killer, right? And so there was a lot of humor there, and it made for kind of a fun experience for Night Night to kind of create those moments and buoy them and make them as effervescent as possible. The smile wasn't really something that I'm not an actor who sits in front of the mirror and decides how to look in front of the camera. It comes from an internal place. I think the smile that you're talking about is when he's really trying to cover the fact that he's figured something out that's dangerous to him, and he's not quite sure what he's going to do about it, and maybe he's going to have to kill some people. And on top of that, the cover that's barely covering is the smile that is ultimately going to seem really creepy because there's murder in his eyes.
Hey, I gotta go to the bathroom. I can leave you here in the seat.
I'm good, Dad.
There were thousands of extras there every day. The whole section, at least one section, was filled with screaming kids. And what was wonderful is that I hadn't been to a concert like this before with my kids. I'd been to a pop concert since I was a kid, and the experience has changed entirely. Now everybody has phones and they're interactive, and everybody knows every word. And I didn't know that while we were filming, but I was watching it and kind of getting a sense of, oh, okay, is this what it's like? Okay, I buy this. This feels real. And then recently I went to a concert with my daughters, and it was exactly the same. So Night nailed it. It's exactly what it feels like. And when you're acting in the middle of something that feels authentic, it just helps the performance. It's just kind of a nice, it's a nice additional part of the movie. When we're speaking, there is a beat track that just goes tick, 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 tick. And so everybody knows what the sort of the movement of the music should be. And they've heard a bit of the music before we start filming. So we'll play some of the music. Salika will be up on stage, she'll be dancing, she'll be miming, the audience goes quiet, and you hear the tick track, and then we start doing our dialogue. So there was no, and I start screaming my dialogue, she starts screaming her dialogue back, and we look like weirdos, but it's the only way to record the dialogue cleanly. Salika was able to pull off both, I think, a really good pop concert and a soundtrack that gets into the mind of the character. The character is so different from a pop sort of, I mean, subject matter. He's a serial killer. So I mean, she did an amazing job writing these songs and then performing them. It didn't change the way that I was approaching my character, but just kind of recognizing over the course of it, as I heard her performing songs as my character's going through something, and recognizing that they were overlapping. I was amazed. I was amazed at the artistry. It was an incredible thing to pull off.
This shit slaps, Dad. Thank you. Thank you. This is literally the best day of my life.
Well, I didn't take many aspects of myself for this role because I just felt it was completely inappropriate. It's a super, super dark psychology. So I wanted it to feel almost overachieving. Like he's wearing a lot of bracelets and he's so enthusiastic for his daughter. But then also, like, there are moments where he catches himself and he's actually enjoying watching her enjoy the concert. So there has to be a journey even within his pretending to be this guy for it to be interesting. And so there were many, many layers of things that we were playing with on the day. And I feel like the character, if you kind of watch him closely, you get a sense of all those different elements, you know, like, because there are layers of character on top of layers of character with Cooper, which is a lot of fun. Ari's a very, very talented young actor, and she has like an enormous capacity to just be honest and present, and like, she's the sweetest person ever. And she had a really tough job. Like, she had to play this character, but then she also had to go to school every day. So she was working twice as hard as I was, and then she'd come back and she'd still be full of life and effervescence. And Night was really encouraging of her, and I think we created an environment where she felt like she could explore and have fun, and I had fun working with her, and we just tried to keep it as light as possible, because ultimately, as far as Cooper goes, all the darkness is sort of happening behind, like, she's not supposed to see it anyway. So it's just supposed to be a dad and his daughter, and the dad's acting a little strange, but she's not supposed to really understand what's going on. And so we just got to play like we were father and daughter, and that was really nice. Those were the fun days.
You know the butcher? That freaking nut job that goes around chopping people up? The feds heard that he's gonna be here today.
Night was very encouraging of me exploring the character, making him the lights as light as possible and the darks as dark as possible, and making it a sort of a really extreme character. There was no moment that I think he had to encourage me to go further. I always wanted to push the character further, and I think we got different takes with different elements in it, and if he ever pulled anything back, I think it was because he felt like an audience member might not understand where, like, the internal machinations of Cooper were going. But I never felt like unsafe to really push the character far. Night's a very generous director. He's very open and collaborative, and he wanted me to make this character as much my own as possible. And I'm always someone who wants to experiment, so I'm always someone who's trying to look to make the character a little bit different than it might seem like on the page or that people have seen before. What sticks out to me most about working with Knight is his optimism and his openness to the process of watching film. So he is an audience member sitting in his director's chair watching the monitor, and you can see him just kind of shift into audience mode where he's just soaking in everything that's coming at him and hopefully getting a sense of what the audience is going to feel. And I've never seen a director be that open to that. And that's wonderful. And just watching from on set, watching him and his enthusiasm for the art of making film, and his optimism about what we're going to be able to achieve, and then also his detailed sort of preparation was inspiring. It was very cool. I find that the scenario, and I think Knight will agree with this, is ultimately hilarious, and so putting this character in that environment, to me, created so much of the comedy, and the fact that the character is starting to explore this like openness to being himself in public is also fun because he doesn't know how to do that, and he's also like it brings out this mania in him that's a little bit kind of simultaneously funny and terrifying, and I found that whole exploration to be awesome and kind of a gift, and you don't really get to find characters. You don't find the characters that you get to play like this very often. So I was enormously gratified to be given the opportunity by Night and to be encouraged so much by Night, and hopefully we'll be able to do it again sometime.